The fluorescent hum of the server room was a dull comfort, usually. Tonight, it was a menacing drone. It was 3 a.m., and Elena, a senior cybersecurity analyst at a major European bank, stared at her monitor, a knot tightening in her stomach. A critical alert, flagged by an obscure anomaly detection system, pulsed red. Not a firewall breach. Not a DDoS attack. Something far more unsettling. She saw a withdrawal to staggering sum of cash, dispensed from an ATM in Kiev. But the transaction log showed no card, no PIN, no biometric scan. Nothing. Just an internal command, originating from inside the bank's secure network. An impossible command. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up logs, cross-referencing IP addresses, user accounts. Every check came back clean. Too clean. This wasn't an external hack, a brute force assault. This felt like a ghost, moving unseen within the bank's very veins. The system indicated an employee had authorized it, yet no employee was logged in. No one was even supposed to be accessing that specific function at this hour. Sweat beaded on her forehead. An internal threat was every CISO's nightmare, but this was different. This felt automated. Orchestrated. The single event soon became 2, then 3, across different cities, all with the same silent, cardless instruction. The impossible was happening, and the bank was bleeding cash, one phantom transaction at a time. Elena's frantic calls woke her superiors, then security teams, then the head of fraud. The initial reaction was disbelief, then suspicion, then a chilling realization: this wasn't an isolated incident. Across Eastern Europe, whispers turned into alarmed shouts. Financial institutions, from sprawling national banks to smaller regional credit unions, reported similar, inexplicable hemorrhages. ATMs were spontaneously disgorging cash, not in a torrent, but in controlled, deliberate bursts. The money vanished into the night with no trace of a cardholder. The early victims were primarily in Ukraine and Russia, then Belarus, Kazakhstan, extending silently across the continent. Each bank initially suspected internal corruption, a rogue employee exploiting a loophole. But the sheer scale, the identical modus operandi across disparate systems, shattered that illusion. This was an organized campaign, a sophisticated shadow entity that understood the deep architecture of modern banking. They weren't just exploiting vulnerabilities, they were commanding the systems. The financial world held its breath, trying to grasp the impossible. Someone had learned to speak the silent language of the machines, to make them surrender their treasure without a fight. The scale of the thefts began to dwarf anything seen before, a quiet tsunami of digital larceny. To understand how a ghost could walk through a bank's digital doors, investigators had to rewind. The initial breach wasn't a frontal assault, but a whisper, a carefully crafted deception. It began months earlier, with seemingly innocuous emails landing in the inboxes of specific bank employees. Not just any employees, but those in IT departments, or with access to payment processing and ATM networks. The emails were perfect imitations: a fake internal memo, a software update notification, a friendly message from a colleague. Contained within these attachments was not a virus, but a meticulously designed piece of malware known as Carbanak. It wasn't loud or destructive. It was a digital chameleon, designed for stealth and persistence. Once opened, it burrowed deep, establishing a silent foothold. It bypassed standard antivirus, slipped past intrusion detection systems. The employee, oblivious, had just handed the keys to their workstation to an invisible adversary. This wasn't about stealing passwords immediately. It was about gaining a toehold, a single, unassuming access point, from which the attackers could begin their patient, methodical infiltration. The first domino had fallen, almost imperceptibly, setting the stage for a financial catastrophe that would span continents. Once inside, the Carbanak group demonstrated an unnerving patience. They didn't immediately grab cash. Instead, they began an intensive, weeks-long reconnaissance mission. Like master cartographers, they mapped the target bank's entire internal network. Every server, every database, every domain controller was meticulously catalogued. They moved laterally, jumping from one compromised machine to another, elevating their privileges slowly, stealthily, like a predator stalking its prey. Their goal wasn't just access, it was understanding. They needed to grasp the complex flow of money, the approval processes, the specific software controlling financial transactions, and crucially, the ATM management systems. This wasn't a smash and grab. This was a deep dive into the nervous system of a financial institution. They identified key employees, their roles, their access levels. The sheer depth of their infiltration was breathtaking. They weren't just in the house, they were in the master bedroom, observing, learning, and planning, unnoticed. Every click, every keystroke, every internal communication was a piece of the puzzle, slowly revealing the perfect pathway to the vault. The reconnaissance phase culminated in the deployment of advanced surveillance tools. These weren't crude keyloggers. The Carbanak group implemented sophisticated remote access trojans and monitoring software that allowed them to literally see through the eyes of bank employees. They captured screenshots, recorded video of desktop activities, and logged every single keystroke. They watched, for weeks, sometimes months, as employees went about their daily tasks. Imagine a hidden camera above your monitor, feeding live footage to an unseen observer thousands of miles away. They learned the rhythms of the bank, when certain transactions were approved, the specific interfaces used for managing account balances, and the precise sequence of commands required to initiate an ATM cash disbursement. They studied the employees responsible for these critical functions, understanding their habits, their passwords, their secure tokens. This wasn't hacking in the traditional sense, it was a digital impersonation academy. They were preparing to not just bypass security, but to become the legitimate authority within the bank, wielding its own tools against it. The stage was set, the actors chosen, and the script written. This was the true genius, and the most terrifying aspect of Operation Carbanak, the art of digital metamorphosis. The attackers didn't merely steal credentials. They hijacked active employee sessions, remotely taking control of their computers. Imagine an employee logged into their system, perhaps stepped away for a coffee break, or even working late, and suddenly, their mouse cursor moves on its own. Windows open, fields are populated, commands are executed, all while the legitimate user is powerless, or simply not there to notice. They didn't just mimic. They became the employee. They would activate specific software used for financial transfers, for managing customer accounts, for controlling the ATM network. They would even adjust the screen resolution on the compromised machine to fit their own remote setup, seamlessly blending into the bank's operational flow. This allowed them to initiate transactions, create fake accounts, and most critically, to send commands to ATMs. They could increase account balances, then move the inflated funds to mule accounts, or instruct ATMs to dispense cash at predetermined times. The line between legitimate bank operations and criminal activity blurred until it vanished entirely. The bank was, in essence, robbing itself, commanded by unseen hands. With complete control, the Carbanak group executed their cash-out blueprint. This wasn't about stealing individual credit card numbers. It was a surgical strike at the heart of the banking system itself. One primary method involved manipulating database records. They would remotely inflate a random account's balance, sometimes by millions, then quickly transfer a portion of that new money to an account controlled by their network of mules. The original, legitimate account holder would remain oblivious, their real balance untouched. Another devastating tactic involved the direct manipulation of ATM software. They gained access to the core systems that managed cash dispensers. From thousands of miles away, they could send direct commands to specific ATMs at specific times. Imagine code flashing across a screen, instructing a machine to open its vault, not for a customer, but for a waiting accomplice. These commands bypassed all traditional security protocols, as they were perceived as internal, authorized instructions. The ATMs were essentially told to emit cash, no card, no PIN, no authentication required. It was the ultimate digital heist, turning the bank's own infrastructure into their unwitting accomplices, a silent digital puppet master pulling the strings of a global financial network. The moment of truth arrived, usually under the cloak of darkness. Across cities in Eastern Europe, and later globally, at predetermined times, Carbanak's network of physical operatives, their mules, would position themselves near targeted ATMs. These weren't sophisticated criminals, often they were low-level recruits, unaware of the digital wizardry behind their instructions. Then, precisely on cue, the ATMs would spring to life. With no card inserted, no customer present, the machines would begin to eject bundles of cash. The mules would calmly collect the money, often recording the pickup with their phones, a chilling blend of high-tech orchestration and low-tech execution. The process was fast, efficient, and left almost no physical trace. The Carbanak operators, watching remotely, would verify the pickup, confirm the money was secured, and then the digital trail would vanish, leaving behind only an empty ATM vault and a bewildered bank. The sheer audacity of these ghost withdrawals, combined with their coordinated precision, sent shivers down the spines of the investigators. The money didn't just disappear, it was materialized from the bank's internal systems and then snatched from the real world, leaving a gaping hole in the ledger. Initially, the banks were in a state of utter confusion. Reports of missing cash from ATMs, inexplicable balance sheet discrepancies, and phantom transfers were dismissed as technical glitches, accounting errors, or even isolated internal fraud. A bank in Russia might notice a few million rubles vanished, attributing it to a failed system update. A Ukrainian institution might see an ATM empty itself, blaming faulty hardware. But as the incidents mounted, and the patterns began to emerge across different regions, a terrifying picture crystallized. This wasn't isolated. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't an inside job by a single rogue employee. The financial institutions found themselves in a crisis meeting, their faces pale, their voices strained. The impossible had become undeniable. Who was doing this? How were they doing it? The fear wasn't just about the money lost, it was the chilling realization that their entire digital infrastructure, the very bedrock of trust in modern banking, had been utterly compromised. The enemy was not just at the gates, they were already inside, wearing the bank's own uniform, operating with chilling precision. What began as a terrifying phenomenon in Eastern Europe quickly spiraled into a global financial epidemic. The Carbanak group was not content with merely bleeding a few banks dry. Their ambition was far grander, their reach far wider. Reports started filtering in from financial institutions across the globe, the United States, Germany, China, Japan. The same modus operandi, the same stealthy infiltration, the same impossible ATM withdrawals, the same phantom transfers. Cybersecurity firms, initially called in to investigate individual breaches, quickly connected the dots. The signature of the Carbanak malware, its unique digital fingerprint, was appearing in forensic reports from disparate corners of the world. This wasn't a localized threat, it was a multinational, orchestrated assault on the very foundation of global finance. The realization sent shockwaves through the industry. No bank was truly safe. The Carbanak group had proven that with enough patience, enough technical skill, and enough daring, a few lines of code could effectively print money, extracting billions from the global economy. It was a stark, brutal awakening to a new era of cybercrime, where physical vaults meant nothing against a ghost that could command cash with a keystroke. With the scale of the threat now undeniable, an unprecedented international investigation began. Leading cybersecurity firms, notably Kaspersky Lab, joined forces with law enforcement agencies worldwide. Their task was monumental, to peel back the layers of digital deception and expose the Carbanak ghost. Forensic analysts meticulously dissected every scrap of malware recovered. They traced network traffic, analyzed command and control server communications, and reconstructed the group's movements inside compromised bank networks. Every byte of data told a story. They discovered the Carbanak malware's custom-built modules, its sophisticated evasive techniques, and its ability to adapt. This wasn't off-the-shelf hacking, it was bespoke, designed with a deep understanding of banking systems. The technical virtuosity was alarming. They uncovered how the attackers remotely viewed employee screens, modified database entries, and sent direct commands to ATMs. Each discovery was a terrifying step closer to understanding the enemy, revealing a level of precision and planning that defied traditional notions of cybercrime. The digital dissection was slow, painstaking work, but it was yielding critical clues, painting a clearer picture of the unseen architects of this billion-dollar heist. The painstaking digital forensics began to bear fruit, revealing not just the how, but the who. Investigators traced the command and control servers, the nerve centers from which the Carbanak group orchestrated their global operations. These servers were strategically located, often using anonymous hosting services and VPNs to obscure their true origin, but digital breadcrumbs are hard to erase entirely. Through a combination of technical sleuthing and intelligence gathering, a clearer picture of the group emerged. They were highly organized, multinational, and primarily spoke Russian. This wasn't a lone wolf or a small gang. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise, operating with discipline and a corporate-like structure. They communicated through encrypted channels, used burner phones for physical coordination, and meticulously planned each phase of their attacks. The investigation uncovered their infrastructure, a hidden network of compromised servers, proxy chains, and money mule networks spanning dozens of countries. The revelation that such a coordinated, pervasive threat could operate for so long, undetected, exploiting the very trust mechanisms of the global financial system, was profoundly unsettling. The shadows were beginning to recede, revealing the faces of the unseen architects. Years of painstaking investigation, led by Europol, Interpol, the FBI, and national law enforcement agencies across Europe and beyond, culminated in a series of coordinated strikes. This wasn't a single raid, it was a carefully synchronized global operation, targeting key members of the Carbanak group and their vast network of money mules. The arrests began in early 2018, primarily in Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, and Moldova. The leader, identified as a 33-year-old Ukrainian national, was apprehended in Alicante, Spain, after extensive surveillance. His capture was a critical blow, dismantling the central command structure. Simultaneous raids across multiple countries rounded up dozens of accomplices, from the hackers who crafted the malware to the low-level operatives who picked up the cash from ATMs. Evidence seized from their homes and hideouts included vast amounts of digital data, encrypted communications, and details of their illicit financial networks. It was a massive victory for law enforcement, demonstrating an unprecedented level of international cooperation against a truly borderless threat. The silence of the ghost in the machine was finally broken, replaced by the clang of handcuffs and the flicker of police lights. While the arrests dealt a significant blow to the Carbanak group, the true impact of their operation reverberated far beyond the recovered funds and successful prosecutions. Over 5 years, they had stolen an estimated $1 billion, possibly more, from over 100 financial institutions in 40 countries. The monetary loss was staggering, but the damage to trust, to the very perceived infallibility of modern banking, was incalculable. Operation Carbanak served as a brutal, undeniable wake-up call. It forced banks worldwide to fundamentally re-evaluate their cybersecurity defenses, investing billions in new technologies, more robust protocols, and enhanced employee training. It exposed the critical vulnerability of human error and the terrifying effectiveness of social engineering. The scars of Carbanak remain, a stark reminder that the biggest threats don't always come with a bang, but with a whisper of code. The methods may evolve, the malware may change, but the unseen battle for control over our digital financial lives continues, a constant, silent war against the ghosts in the machine. And the world watches, wondering what new, unimaginable threat lurks just beyond the horizon.